What does your birth date say about your karma? It's not just astrology, it's much deeper. Stay until the end and you'll be surprised. You might think this is cheap mysticism, but Buddhist teachings about karma go far beyond generic predictions. Mariana adjusted her black-framed glasses, her brown eyes focused on the bright screen in front of her. Her agile fingers danced across the keyboard, inputting lines of code with almost mechanical precision. She was about to execute an algorithm that could revolutionize the way we understand patterns in large data sets. That's when it happened. A soft ping interrupted her concentration. A new email. Normally, Mariana would ignore the notification, but something about this one caught her attention. The subject was simply a number. Wimteen 071 990. Intrigued, she clicked to open it. The content of the email was as enigmatic as its subject. There was no greeting, no signature, just a single line of text. Are you ready to discover the secret hidden in your existence? Below the cryptic message was a link. Mariana frowned, her scientific skepticism immediately on alert. Spam. Some kind of scam. She was about to delete the email when something made her stop. The number in the subject. It seemed familiar. With a start, she realized. 1507-19990, July 15th, 1990. Her birth date. A shiver ran down her spine. How did someone get this information? And why send it in such a mysterious way? Against her better judgment, Mariana's curiosity was piqued. She began to analyze the email, looking for clues. The sender's address was an apparently random sequence of numbers and letters. The email header revealed nothing beyond the basics. Mariana hesitated, the cursor hovering over the link. Years of cybersecurity training screamed at her not to click. But something deeper, an intuition she rarely acknowledged, urged her to go forward. With a deep sigh, she clicked. The screen went black for a moment, then exploded into a cacophony of dancing numbers. They moved, merged, separated, forming hypnotic patterns. Mariana watched, fascinated, as the numbers seemed to tell a silent story. Gradually, the numbers stabilized, forming a message. The Secret of Karmic Numbers, one-time lecture. Today, 8 p.m. Old Light Theater. Below, an interactive map showed the location of the theater. Mariana leaned back in her chair, her mind a storm of thoughts. Karmic numbers. What pseudoscientific nonsense was this? As a data scientist, she lived in the world of numbers, but always in the realm of the concrete, the probable, the statistically significant. There was no place for mysticism in her universe of algorithms and analyses. And yet, the precision of the email, the way it captured her attention, the elaborate presentation, all of this spoke of a level of sophistication that went beyond common charlatanism. Moreover, a part of her, a part that she often suppressed in the name of scientific rigor, was curious. What if there was more to numbers than she knew? Mariana looked at the clock. 9:15 am. The lecture would be in less than 11 hours. She had a full day ahead, experiments to supervise, meetings to attend, but she knew she wouldn't be able to concentrate. This enigma would consume her thoughts until she solved it. With a sigh of resignation, Mariana saved her work and turned off the computer. She would go to the lecture, not because she believed in karmic numbers or destiny, but because her scientific instinct told her there was a mystery to be unraveled. As she left the laboratory, Mariana couldn't help but wonder, what exactly would she discover tonight? And how would it change her understanding of the world and of herself? The day dragged on, each minute seeming like an eternity. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Mariana found herself in front of the Old Light Theater, her heart beating with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. What awaited her beyond those ancient doors? Only time would tell. The old Light Theater was a relic of a bygone era, its Art Deco facade contrasting drastically with the glass and steel skyscrapers surrounding it. Mariana hesitated for a moment before climbing the worn steps, feeling as if she were about to cross a portal to another world. The interior of the theater was a study in contrasts. The lobby, with its polished marble floor and crystal chandeliers, spoke of past grandeur. But as Mariana advanced, she noticed subtle signs of decay. A crack here, a damp stain there. The air had a slightly musty smell, like pages of old books. Following the flow of people, Mariana entered the main auditorium. The lights were low, creating an atmosphere of intimacy despite the size of the space. The stage was empty except for a solitary podium. Above it, a large screen displayed a series of constantly changing numbers. Mariana chose a seat near the back, her scientist's instinct leading her to seek an observation position. As she waited, she studied the crowd around her. To her surprise, it was a diverse group. Young college students, middle-aged executives in expensive suits, elderly people of wise appearance. All seemed united by the same expression of anxious expectation. Exactly at 8 p.m., the lights dimmed even further. A man took the stage, his steps echoing in the sudden silence. He was tall and thin, with disheveled gray hair and penetrating eyes behind tortoiseshell-framed glasses. He wore a worn suit that seemed to have seen better days. "Good evening." His voice was surprisingly strong and clear. "I am Dr. Antonio Silva, and I'm here to talk about the secret that each of you has carried since birth." Mariana straightened in her chair, all her senses on alert. "Each of you," Dr. Silva continued, "was born at a specific moment, a unique moment in the vast tapestry of time. And that moment, encoded in your birth date, contains the key to understanding your purpose in this life." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the audience. For a moment, Mariana had the impression that he was looking directly at her. "I am speaking, of course, of your karmic number." A murmur ran through the audience. Mariana resisted the urge to roll her eyes. So far, this sounded like the typical pseudoscientific discourse she expected. But then, Dr. Silva did something unexpected. He began to talk about mathematics, not the simplistic mathematics that Mariana associated with horoscopes and tarot readings, but complex concepts of number theory and combinatorial analysis. "The karmic number," he explained, "is calculated through a series of mathematical operations on your birth date. But it's not just an arbitrary calculation. It's based on deep mathematical principles that go back to ancient Pythagorean traditions and modern discoveries in chaos theory and quantum mechanics." Mariana leaned forward, her scientific curiosity aroused despite her skepticism. Dr. Silva went on, detailing the calculation process. It involved numerological reduction, but also incorporated concepts from set theory and even elements of cryptography. As he explained, the numbers on the screen behind him danced, illustrating each step of the process. "But the true power of the karmic number," said Dr. Silva, his voice lowering to almost a whisper, forcing the audience to lean forward, "is not just in its calculation, it's in its application." He then shared a series of case studies, people who had discovered their karmic numbers and used this knowledge to make dramatic changes in their lives. A man who changed careers and found unexpected success. A woman who overcame a chronic illness. A couple who resolved long-standing conflicts in their relationship. Mariana listened, part of her wanting to dismiss it all as coincidence and wishful thinking, but another part, a part she barely recognized, feeling a spark of something, curiosity, hope. She wasn't sure. As the lecture came to an end, Dr. Silva issued a challenge to the audience. "Calculate your karmic numbers," he said, "but don't stop there. Investigate. Question. Test." True understanding comes not from blind acceptance, but from curious exploration. His eyes once again met Mariana's, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Who knows, he concluded with an enigmatic smile. You may discover that the universe is more mysterious and more mathematical than you ever imagined. As the audience erupted into applause, Mariana remained motionless in her seat, her mind spinning. She came expecting to unmask a charlatan. Instead, she found an enigma that challenged her most basic assumptions about reality. As she left the theater into the cool night, Mariana knew one thing for certain. Her investigation was just beginning. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Mariana's apartment, finding her already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with an untouched cup of coffee cooling beside her. Her laptop was open in front of her, the screen full of spreadsheets and calculations. Mariana hadn't slept much the night before. After Dr. Silva's lecture, her mind was in turmoil, filled with numbers and possibilities. She spent most of the night researching, seeking any information she could find about karmic numbers and the enigmatic Dr. Silva. To her surprise and frustration, there was little to be found. Some vague mentions in obscure numerology forums, a couple of articles on pseudoscience blogs, but nothing substantial. It was as if Dr. Silva and his theory had emerged from nowhere. With a sigh, Mariana leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. Part of her wanted to dismiss it all as elaborate nonsense, to return to the comfort of her algorithms and concrete data. But another part, a part that was becoming increasingly insistent, couldn't let the mystery go. She remembered Dr. Silva's final challenge. Calculate your karmic numbers, investigate, question, test. Well, Mariana muttered to herself, I guess that's what I'm going to do. She opened a new spreadsheet and began to work, entering her birth date, 15/07/1990. Following the instructions Dr. Silva had provided, she began to apply the mathematical operations. As she worked, Mariana couldn't help but notice the elegance of the formulas. There was a certain beauty in the way the numbers intertwined and transformed. It was as if she were deciphering a complex code. After an hour of meticulous calculations and double-checks, Mariana arrived at the final result. Her karmic number, 7. She looked at the number on the screen, feeling a mix of emotions. Skepticism, of course. It was just a number after all. But also a hint of anticipation. Anxiety? It was hard to name the feeling. Determined to approach this with the scientific rigor that defined her career, Mariana began to research the meaning of the number 7 in various numerological and philosophical traditions. To her surprise, she found a wealth of information. The 7 was often associated with the pursuit of knowledge, deep analysis, introspection. It was the number of the researcher, the scientist, the philosopher. In many cultures, it was considered a sacred or mystical number. Mariana laughed softly. Well, at least it's appropriate for a data scientist, she thought. But then, something made her stop. She began to think about her life, her choices, her challenges. Her decision to pursue a career in science, despite family pressure to follow a more traditional path. Her tendency to isolate herself in her work, often at the cost of personal relationships. Her relentless pursuit of answers, even when the questions seemed impossible. All of this seemed to align oddly well with the descriptions she was reading. Coincidence, Mariana muttered, but her voice didn't carry the conviction she had hoped for. Determined to go deeper, Mariana began to calculate the karmic numbers of people she knew. Family members, friends, colleagues. For each one, she researched the associated meanings and compared them with what she knew about their lives and personalities. The results were intriguing. It wasn't a perfect match in all cases, certainly, but there were enough correlations to make Mariana feel uncomfortable. It was as if she were seeing a pattern emerge, but one that defied her rational understanding of the world. As she worked, an idea began to form in her mind. What if she could apply her data science skills to this? Create an algorithm to analyze a large set of birth dates and life stories, looking for correlations with karmic numbers. The idea both excited and frightened her in equal measure. On one hand, it was an opportunity to apply the scientific method to something that seemed, at first glance, unscientific. On the other hand, what if she actually found something? How would that fit into her worldview? Mariana looked at the clock and realized that hours had passed. She had a lab meeting in less than an hour. With a sigh, she closed the laptop. But as she prepared for the day, her mind kept spinning with possibilities. She knew she couldn't just leave this behind. Dr. Silva's challenge had become her own personal challenge. On her way to the lab, Mariana made a stop at the campus coffee shop. As she waited in line, her eyes fell on a poster on the wall. It was an advertisement for a lecture on the intersection of science and spirituality happening next week. Normally, Mariana would have ignored something like this. But now, she found herself jotting down the details on her phone. Maybe, she thought, it was time to expand her horizons. When she arrived at the lab, Mariana was full of an energy she hadn't felt in years. She had a new project, a new mystery to unravel. And although part of her still felt uncomfortable with the whole idea of karmic numbers, another part, a part that was growing with each moment, was eager to see where this journey would take her. As she turned on her computer and prepared for the meeting, Mariana couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that a simple, mysterious email would lead her to question everything she thought she knew about the universe and her place in it? The challenge was set, and Mariana was more than ready to accept it. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind for Mariana. Her days were divided between her official work in the lab and her growing obsession with karmic numbers. Nights turned into mornings as she delved deeper and deeper into her research. On her personal computer, protected by several layers of security, Mariana had begun to build a database. Birth dates, life stories, achievements, challenges, all carefully cataloged and cross-referenced with their respective karmic numbers. It was during one of these nocturnal data analysis sessions that Mariana made her first truly surprising discovery. She was examining a group of individuals with karmic number 5, supposedly associated with change, freedom, and adventure. As she plotted their life trajectories on a graph, Mariana noticed something strange. There were peaks of activity, moments of dramatic change, that seemed to occur at regular intervals. "This can't be a coincidence," Mariana muttered, leaning closer to the screen. Delving deeper into the data, she discovered that these peaks usually coincided with multiples of 5 in the person's age, 25, 30, 35 years, and so on. It was as if the number 5 was deeply intertwined not only in their karmic number, but in the very rhythm of their lives. Intrigued, Mariana began to look for similar patterns in other karmic numbers. To her surprise and excitement, she found correlations in all of them. People with karmic number 7, like her, tended to have moments of deep introspection and personal discoveries at ages that were multiples of 7. But the most shocking discovery came when Mariana decided to examine historical events. She began to calculate the karmic numbers of nations based on their dates of foundation or independence. What she found left her speechless. Major social changes, revolutions, technological leaps, all seemed to cluster around years that resonated with the country's karmic number. It was as if there was an underlying rhythm to history itself, a numerical pulse that guided the destiny of nations. "This is madness," Mariana said aloud, running her hands through her hair in frustration. "There has to be a rational explanation for this." But the more she looked for alternative explanations, the more the patterns seemed to solidify. It was as if the numbers were mocking her, challenging her to deny their existence. Mariana knew she was on the verge of something big, something that could change not just her understanding of the world, but potentially science itself. But she also knew she needed to be cautious. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and she wasn't yet sure if what she had discovered qualified as such. As the sun rose, marking the beginning of another day, Mariana made a decision. She needed help. Someone who could offer a different perspective. Someone who understood both the rigor of science and the possibilities of the unknown. With a mix of apprehension and expectation, Mariana opened her email and began to write a message to Dr. Silva. It was time to take her investigation to the next level. As she clicked send, Mariana couldn't help but wonder, how far would this journey take her? And was she really ready for the answers she might find?